Well, hello there, YouTube people. I've decided I'm going to start video journaling the rest of my build for the 1934 two-door Chevy Sedan. I've been working on it since 2015. Bought this car from a great couple just outside of Regina, Saskatchewan. Their grandfather, his grandfather, was the original owner of this car, bought it back in 1934. It was parked in a barn in 1948, and then in 1986, the individual I bought it from brought it back to his garage. He was going to hot rod the car, and turned out that didn't happen. So about 9 years ago, I found it on Kijiji. Drove down to Regina and bought the car. Lovely couple. I've started to build it in memory of my mom that passed away in 2015. So we call it Project Betty Lou, and I'll let you take a look at it. So this is what the car looks like currently, obviously. Like I said before, it's a 1934 two-door sedan, fairly rare car, being that, well, the inside of the cab was all made out of wood. So a lot of these cars sat out in the fields and basically rotted and then collapsed on themselves. So luckily, this one was stored inside for many, many years. So it was actually in pretty decent shape. I could have done a restoration on it back to original. It was in that good a condition, but I wanted this to be a driver, and those old cars are, after sitting around in them for a couple days, you can get pretty sore and tired. So this is going to have some modern creature comforts. I built the frame from scratch. There were some cracks in the frame, so I decided to build it all 2x4 hollow structural steel. And then I decided to go with a Corvette C5 front and rear suspension. There's a fellow by the name of Rick Doberton that builds these adapter kits for this very purpose, for C4 and C5 Corvettes. I went with a C5. It's supposed to be a little bit better suspension, and well, we'll see. I did have to narrow the cradles on it, so some cutting and welding there. I am a welder by trade, so that wasn't an issue for me. Yeah, and then went with coilover shocks from Fox all the way around. Yeah, it was quite a bit of work. Took a couple of years just to de-wood the cab, because you had to take out a piece of wood and then reinforce it with steel, then take out another piece of wood and reinforce it with steel so the thing wouldn't collapse on you. So that was a bit of a challenge. All new floorboards, of course, because they were 1934 plywood originally. One thing I did not consider going with the Corvette suspension, so the transmission and transaxles at the back here take up a lot of room, which reduces the amount of room I can have for my fuel tank. So that was a bit of an issue. I built a custom fuel cell so it would fit. So it's kind of a unique design, not typical of a fuel cell. Went with a Holy Sniper fuel pump. Fuel pump is inside. I'm patiently waiting for my Holley fuel sender that will go in here. It utilizes LiDAR, so there's no floats internally. It basically just sends a signal down to the level of the fuel, bounces back, and then tells you how much fuel or how much fuel you don't have. Went with Corvette LS1 engine out of a 2004 Corvette. Had just over 30,000 kilometers on it, so bought it from the wreckers. Hopefully it's good, we'll see. Went with a Mustang rack and pinion. Actually, it's a 88 Ford Thunderbird rack and pinion steering system. So that took some gazintas and some figuring on how to put a metric tie rod into an imperial rack and pinion system. So luckily I know some great people at a machine shop here in Whitecourt at Crawford Machinery that designed something that will work, all threaded. Inside, I've decided to skin everything with metal. Took quite a bit of work to get everything to work. It's basically trial and error. There's not many books on how to do this. The hardest part so far was building the torque tube cover. Being that this is such a narrow car, took a lot of designing and cutting and welding and cutting apart and welding again. And I want everything removable. So especially since the fuel tank's going to be coming out, if I have to do any maintenance on it and I have to pull the tank out, it's got to come out through the cab. So I want the floor removable so I can pull the fuel cell out if I ever have to do that. So yeah, quite a bit of work there to do. The seats, basically they came out of an old Honda Civic. Don't know what year, but had to modify the floor brackets on that to make them fit, and they just barely fit. So it was the smallest seats that I could find that were somewhat comfortable. I talked with some people at Autorama in Calgary, or World of Wheels in Calgary quite a few years ago, and they had a 34 Chevy pickup, and that's what they used was Honda Civic seats. So you kind of learn from others. For the roof, I've still got it braced from moving it up and down, off the chassis, on the chassis a gazillion times. It's actually going to be, I'm going to put a legacy roof on it, so that's a retractable soft top. Just thought that was kind of unique, and yeah, so what else can I tell you about the car? Not a whole lot right now, I guess. I built the door hinges from design I found on the internet. They seem to work pretty good. The old ones, of course, they would screw into wooden doors. And they stuck out here quite a bit, the hinges, so removed that, covered that up. So just a little bit of a cleaner appearance. Having said that, I do want it to somewhat look original. I'm going to put the original signal lights on. This car only had one signal light, and that was the driver's side rear signal light. If you wanted dual signal lights on the back, that was an extra for the car. So had to go to a lot of swap meets and get a lot of different parts, headlights. But I basically got everything for the car. I've got the original, or not the original grille, but a replacement grille. That's original, so that's what that guy looks like. Radiator off of eBay. Lots of stuff off of eBay, Amazon. And right now, like I said, I'm patiently waiting for my LiDAR fuel sender. And unfortunately, instead of coming to where I live in Western Canada, it went to Moncton, New Brunswick, of all places. And so now I was supposed to get it a couple days ago, but it's going to be probably a week before I get it now. So I've decided I'm going to work on the rear fenders while I'm waiting. So seeing that these aren't the original wheels, that's the same size tire that I'm going with. I need to widen the fenders. So I figure I got to widen them a couple inches. I haven't quite measured it out yet, but that's going to involve splitting the fenders in half and welding in some sheet metal in there. And I'm a little nervous about that. I'm not a body guy. I'm a welder by trade. Normally welding on pressure equipment and pipeline, pressure piping, that sort of thing. I'm not really used to welding all this light gauge metal. You need a lot of patience for it. But anyways, seems to be going okay so far. But like I said, it takes a lot of patience. So anyways, that's about it for now. I'll show you a little bit of the progress when I start working on the fender. So as you can see, I've put the fender on the back of the car here. Obviously doesn't fit very well. So the plan is to widen the fenders out a little bit, a few inches, so that the rubber will fit right inside. So probably a couple of inches, 2.5 inches, something like that. This fender, it's got quite a story. The fender on this car when I bought it was beyond repair. So I've went to various swap meets in Red Deer and Tappan and down to Portland, and ended up finding one in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I think it's the largest swap meet in North America. Thousands and thousands of vendors. I put on a Fitbit to see how many miles I put on, and I walked 35 miles in 3.5 days to all the vendor booths. But anyways, I ended up finding a pair of fenders from a fella that came up from outside of Denver, Colorado. And I bought these from him, being that I live outside of Edmonton and I'm in Pennsylvania. I had no way to get the fenders home, couldn't get them on the plane. So they took them back to Colorado and then shipped them up to me. So I think I paid as much for shipping as I did for the fenders. So, but these are like hen's teeth. They are very rare. So the plan is I'll draw a straight line. I'll probably use my laser level to mark the line out. And I want to draw the line on the flattest part of the fender. So it'll probably be in this area, go inside of the body, and then I'll add some sheet metal in there. So I've put a 4-foot level up against the tire. I had to use one of my pipe stands to kind of hold it in place there. When you're doing this by yourself, you gotta kind of be a little bit inventive on how to hold things. But anyways, I'll need to measure from the outside bead of this fender to the level. That'll tell me how much clearance I need as a minimum. So if you can see there, about 1 9/16, 1.5 inches, 1 9/16. So I'm gonna wanna have at least 1 inch of clearance. So I'll probably go about 2.5 inches to where I wanna have this fender out. That's gonna be about the same. Fender should be fairly straight, parallel with the car. This one isn't, of course. It's gonna need some body work, get some of the waves out of it. But we'll do that after we put in the sheet metal. So I put up a couple pipe stands here, put a piece of square tubing on top, leveled it off, put my laser level on there, and marked it approximately in the center of the fender. You can see there. So laser level's dead straight, so that's where I'm gonna mark it. I'm not gonna follow that line with the grinder. Instead, I'm gonna cut my 2.5 inch piece of sheet metal, and then I'll wrap it around there, and I'll use that as a guide. Probably gonna do it in a couple spots, or a couple pieces rather. As you can probably see, I was hoping for a flat spot, but it's not flat. It's a rounded fender on top. So I went with the apex of the fender for my center mark. Probably gonna do this in about 2 or 3 pieces, probably 3 pieces of sheet metal, because I'm expecting I'm gonna have to do a little bit of body work there to get that curvature to make it fit into the wheel well. So as per usual, Shane's can of worms type of thing, it's gonna be more complicated than I originally thought. But it is what it is. We'll get her done, and hopefully it'll look good. So I cut some 18 gauge plate, 2.5 inches wide, a couple just random lengths. One thing I was looking at on the fender, so it's not flat everywhere where I want to make the cut. For instance, I can show you here, you can kind of see where it's cupped there. So that's going to make things a little bit more challenging. So I want to put a piece in that's already kind of pre-formed, shrunk to that curvature. So I kind of looked down the fender and found out where it kind of starts getting less flat. Put a mark there. Kind of focus there. And then one on the other side where it starts to curve, or where it starts to straighten out. I took another third piece and I formed it on my plate roller that I built. And then I was going to run it on my bead roller that I've kind of bastardized here, with the largest bead to kind of give it that curvature, but it was leaving creases in the metal, so I figured I wouldn't go that way. So then I took it over to my planishing hammer and formed this piece. So you can see it's got a bit of a curvature to it. And then that will go on here, overlap that line down here, and little tighter fit then. Once I tack it into place, it should all go into place nicely. And then I can put this straight pieces on each end. I'll probably, after I cut it, I'll probably weld some strips in to hold the fender in place. And just make sure everything doesn't go kitty wonkus on us, and try to make it so that there's as little body work to do as possible. So I ended up cutting the fender freehand with my zip cut. I tried putting those metal strips on and then clamping it on and then following that as a straight edge, but it was just too complicated, so I just did it freehand. Worked out pretty good. So made it into two pieces. I bolted the one piece in already, but as you can see, I've tacked in the curved piece on the top. Got these little round bars tacked in there just to kind of hold everything in place. And I got the back piece tacked in. That one went in real easy. This one was a little more challenging. Lots of hammer and dolly had to be used to get everything to fit up nice and tight and flush. And I used first time I used this welder I bought here about a year ago, kind of a pretend welder, but it works really well on this light gauge material. So pretty happy with that so far. So yeah, it works really good on this light metal. So I think I'll keep using it. Not crazy about the stinger, the whip, but it's just a cheap Amazon whip that I bought. But if it does the job, it'll be good. So just have to weld on the third piece now. Might have to unbolt that from the car. As you can see, it's tucked in there, so there's no way I'll be able to get in there to weld. So I'll have to pull it off, but I'll start on the bottom here. So I got the third strip welded in, or tacked in anyways. After I got it tacked in, I cut it flush with the bottom of the fender. And doing that showed me where to line up the other half of the fender, so I just made it flush. Put a couple tacks in, and it's gonna be like a limp noodle here, so I'm just gonna have to take it nice and slow. Start at the bottom here, work my way up and around, and fit in some of the gaps. A little hammer and dolly work. And then hopefully by the end, when I get down to this end, it'll take shape. Hopefully. This back end, I'm not too concerned with right now. I'm gonna cut most of that out because it's full of rust. You can see there, so that whole section is going to come out, and I'll fabricate a new piece there, and we'll go from there. Well, I finally got it. The strips are welded or tacked in. The fenders are all tacked together. Went a little bit better than I thought it would. I did have a few problems at the top here. I planished that a bit too much, so now I got some creases I've got to deal with, but that can be fixed with the planishing hammer to undo what I did there. So, but overall, pretty happy. It seemed to line up not too bad. So, next step is to put the tire on, see how it looks, and probably tack the other side on the passenger side, get that ready, and then I can weld both of them at the same time, since I gotta jump back and forth, try to keep the heat down. But that's it for tonight.